So welcome everybody. It's wonderful to see so many people here tonight, and a real emblem of the affection in which our village is held. And Brendan has done the heavy lifting here for us this evening. He has explained, I think, wonderfully to us what is involved and what is at stake. And I think you'll agree how difficult it would be for ordinary folks like us to get to grips with an application of this size and scale without the help of an expert like Brendan. And that's one of the really unfair things about this type of application. What's going to happen matters so much to us, and yet our capacity to engage with it is so restricted in so many ways because of the scale, because of the complexity, and because of the very limited time that's available to us. So we're very glad that we were in a position to engage Brendan's services to help. And at the very beginning of this journey of Imagine Dundrum, we did make a bargain with the community that when the time came, we would do our very best to share that support with you, which is why we're here tonight. I'm sure is the case for everybody here. We don't want to see that site left lying for another 18 years. We want to see something happen there, but we want to see something good. And I suppose it was in 2017, in this very room, we had nearly 200 people at a meeting, at our first Imagine Dundrum public meeting. And the purpose of that meeting was very, very different. It was a very positive meeting. We invited the community to come together, to talk together about your views and your vision for the future of Dundrum. And we felt that together we might be able to shape that future because we knew change was coming. And we wanted the voice of the local community to be heard and to have a say in such a significant place, in our place. And when we said to people, what matters to you about Dundrum? These are some of the things that people said. They said, there's a lovely village speed, let's keep it. We love the small shops and the village streetscape. It's a living community. It's a focal point for the surrounding area. It's a hub connecting us all, and we need to strengthen that. And I'm sure most people here this evening share some of those views. So if we have concerns about what is being proposed, it's not about NIMBYism. I really resent that term. I think, it's because local people have a really strong sense of community and what neighbourhood is about, and a strong sense of what makes a great place to live in, to work in, to grow up in, and to grow old in. We know because we live here, and we know that new communities coming into the place will share some of those expectations as to what makes a great community. And as a result of that, we made many different proposals, some to the local authority and some which we shared, all of which we shared with Hammerson Alliance, the owners of this site. We made a strong and very successful case, as Brendan said, for the heritage buildings on the site to be designated as part of an architectural conservation area. We campaigned for a new civic centre, a modern library and civic offices, which are befitting the status of Dundrum as the second major town in the county. And we welcome the commitment of the council in principle to that project. But we wanted to see it centrally on the old shopping centre site, and we wanted it to be connected with a market square that would connect it to the heart of the village. I mean, we're not architects, you're not architects, but we can all see how that could work. We could all see how having a market square in the middle of Dundrum would actually work, where you could have farmers' markets, you could have events, you could have things happening that would bring life back to the village. And that's what we wanted to see. And in terms of businesses, we wanted to see scope for small, independent businesses in Dundrum village. The bookshop, the butcher, the baker, the things we've lost in the village, and we want to get them back. That's what we would like to see happening in the village. We'd like to see new facilities, new civic, cultural and community facilities. And all of those ideas have the strong support of our local representatives, our local councillors and our officials. And in terms of housing then, what do people want to see on that site in terms of housing? Well, many of you will have watched our webinar last November, and it's still on our website. And on that webinar, a very respected and experienced architect set out the case for high-density, low-rise housing, duplexes, 4-storey apartments, houses, where you could achieve the kind of high density that we accept has to happen in the city, but not on a vertical scale of the kind that we have just seen on those plans. And this is actually an internationally solid approach to urban housing, because it blends the evident and accepted need for high-density housing with human-scale neighbourhood living. All of those proposals have been sent to the site owners and circulated locally. And I have to say, it's a source of sadness to us, and indeed regret, that the owners chose not to accede to our many requests over the few years to engage actively with the local community in planning for the site. The community was willing, ready and able to talk, and it would have been a win-win in our view for everybody. And it's a great shame that that opportunity wasn't taken up by the developers. And as Brendan has also pointed out, you know, what we are looking for and what the community is looking for is strongly supported by the Dunleary-Rathdown County Development Plan, which is the planning bible for this county, and it has only recently been signed off. And just to mention something, I think Brendan has mentioned them already, but just to reinforce what he was saying, that county development plan requires civic, community and cultural facilities on the old shopping centre site. It requires that any redevelopment of the site, there has to be employment, leisure, entertainment, cultural and community facilities. And it provides that any development must take cognizance of the character and streetscape of the old main street. So why are we so concerned about these proposals? And it's because so much of the kinds of things we've just spoken about and that Brendan has spoken about and have talked to local people about and carried out research into, they seem to have just been disregarded. Brendan has mentioned the 5-storey building on Main Street, which in our view fails to respect the historic character, scale and streetscape of the village as required in the County Development Plan. The intended demolition of buildings on Main Street, in spite of their statutory designation as an architectural conservation area in the Dunleary-Rathdown County Development Plan. And the ink is barely dry on that plan, we should say. On the 21st of April, it became the planning law of this county. And this planning application effectively drives a coach and four through it. The lack of any provision for civic, culture and community facilities and services on the site. And let's face it, these facilities are critical to the people who live here now, but who will come to live here. We're talking about a population of almost 3,000 people who will be accommodated in the apartments that Brendan showed you. And these extra facilities, the facilities are what a living neighbourhood must be, so much more than apartments. I mean, I think some of us are old enough to remember that there would have been a lot of criticism years ago of the vast council housing estates that were developed in the 50s and 60s, and the argument that those facilities, those housing estates were built without facilities for the people who came to live there, without shops, without a health centre, without a bus stop or whatever. And, you know, subsequently people were very critical that people's lives were impoverished by virtue of the fact that their housing was provided with none of the support facilities or very limited support facilities that they needed in order to have decent neighbourhoods and decent services. And now we're looking at the same thing being likely to happen on this site. So instead of an urban sprawl and what's being called an urban sprawl, we're going to have a vertical sprawl with the very same kinds of concerns as were expressed in the 1950s and 60s about the big council estates. That limited provision for retail, for entertainment, for essential facilities are required by the way this site is zoned. It's zoned as a major town centre. Now, I know the whole area of zoning is new to many of us. It's, land zoning isn't everybody's cup of tea, but that particular zoning has very particular requirements. Housing is permitted on it in principle, but it's also required to have all of these additional facilities. That means that those who live there and those who don't live there, because there are thousands and thousands of people living in the environments of this site who depend on Dundrum village for a great many of their services. So it's not just that this particular development won't have the support services that the people who live there need. It won't have the support services that the wider community has a right to expect in the village of Dundrum as we go forward into the future. And then, as Brendan has said, the overall height and density of the planned development with 11 apartment blocks and the 5 stories on the main street, which, to be honest, we think is just not good. And with one rising to 16 stories at the northern end, and which, as Brendan said, overbearing and wholly out of keeping with the surrounding low density and suburban environment. As I said at the beginning, we actively seek the redevelopment of Dundrum village, but in ways that will strengthen community and create a truly livable neighbourhood that will respect Dundrum's heritage, architecture and protect the environment. And we believe that this application does fall short, far short of that vision. So we will challenge the plans, both because they are not, in our view, responsive to local planning policy, and for what we see as the failure to build the best possible place for the current and new community in Dundrum to grow up in, to work, to live and grow old in, now and into the future. We all really want development here, but we are not looking, and we're not looking to return to the past. We want a modern village, but not this one. We want a livable place where people can get to know each other, to have neighbours, to build relationships, and to have a sense of civic pride and a sense of belonging. And we're not in any way convinced that that's a possibility in the context of this development. So, friends, what's built in the next number of years will shape this place, not for generations, but for hundreds of years. Just as the Pembroke cottages and all the other buildings around Dundrum village at the moment were built hundreds of years ago by the developers of their day who had good insight into what makes a village. And we owe it to those who will inhabit this place to do the very best we can to make sure it's the best place it can be. And so it's our challenge, and we believe it's your challenge, and we all take it up over the next few weeks to do our very best together for the future of Dundrum. Making an observation to An Bord Pleanála would be the best €20 you've ever spent. Thank you.